The conference room had emptied in seconds. 20 executives, all scrambling for the exits as the building's emergency alarms shrieked through the halls. Papers scattered like frightened birds. Chairs toppled in the rush, and the acrid smell of smoke began seeping through the ventilation system. Catherine Monroe, CEO of Monroe Industries, stood frozen by the window on the 42nd floor, her knuckles white against her wheelchair's armrests, watching her entire leadership team abandon her without a backward glance. "Please, don't leave me here alone," she had called out, her voice cracking with a vulnerability she'd never shown in 15 years of commanding boardrooms. But they were already gone, their footsteps fading down the emergency stairwell, leaving her behind like she was just another piece of office furniture too cumbersome to carry. Marcus Chen had been in the break room when the alarm started, warming up his daughter's lunch. He was just the IT guy, the single dad who came in early and left right at 5 to pick up Lily from school. Nobody really knew him beyond his quick smile and his ability to fix any computer problem in under 10 minutes. But when he heard that desperate plea echo through the empty corridor, something in his chest tightened. He'd heard that same fear in his daughter's voice the night her mother left them both without explanation. He found Catherine in the boardroom, tears streaming down her face, trying desperately to maneuver her wheelchair toward the door. The building shuddered, and somewhere below them, glass shattered. Marcus didn't hesitate. He'd grown up carrying his grandmother up 3 flights of stairs every day after her stroke. He knew what it meant to be left behind, to be seen as a burden. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus from IT. We're getting you out of here," he said calmly, already assessing the situation. The elevators were dead, obviously. The main stairwell would be chaos. But he'd worked in this building for 3 years, installing servers in places most people didn't know existed. "You should save yourself," Catherine whispered. But her eyes betrayed her hope. "I'll just slow you down. The fire department will come." "Not fast enough," Marcus said, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "And I'm not leaving you. My daughter would never forgive me if she knew I left someone behind when I could help. Now do you trust me?" Catherine looked at this man she'd never really noticed before. She'd probably passed him in the hallways 100 times without acknowledgement. She'd built an empire, commanded respect in boardrooms across the country, but in this moment, she was completely dependent on the kindness of someone she'd never even learned to see. She nodded. Marcus lifted her with surprising gentleness, years of carrying a sleepy 6-year-old up to bed translating into the strength he needed now. Catherine was lighter than he expected, and as he settled her weight, he caught sight of the fear and shame in her eyes. "There's no shame in needing help," he said softly, as if reading her mind. "We all need someone eventually." He couldn't take the wheelchair, but he knew another way. Through the server room, there was a maintenance stairwell that most people didn't know existed. It would be tight, it would be long, but it would be less crowded. As smoke began filling the hallways, Marcus moved with purpose, Catherine clinging to his shoulders, directing him through turns she could see better from her elevated position. Halfway down, around floor 22, Marcus's legs began to shake. Catherine felt it. "Put me down," she insisted. "Rest for a minute." "Can't stop on the stairs," Marcus panted, but his pace had slowed considerably. Sweat poured down his face, and his breathing was labored. The smoke was thicker here, and each breath burned. "Yes, you can." "There's a landing right ahead, please." Catherine's voice had changed. It wasn't the commanding tone of a CEO or the desperate plea of someone trapped. It was human, concerned, equal. "Tell me about your daughter." Marcus made it to the landing and carefully set Catherine down against the wall, his arms trembling. He pulled out his inhaler, took 2 puffs, and tried to steady his breathing. Through the small window, they could see fire trucks arriving, dozens of people milling about below, so far away. "Lily," he said between breaths. "She's 6, loves dinosaurs and thinks I'm the strongest person in the world." His voice cracked. "I need to stay that person for her." Catherine pulled out her phone. No signal, but she had something else. In her pocket was a small photo she always carried. Her own daughter, Sarah, who'd died in a car accident 3 years ago. The daughter who'd used a wheelchair after the accident, just like Catherine did now after the same crash that took her child. She'd thrown herself into work, built walls, stopped seeing people as people because it hurt less than remembering what she'd lost. I had a daughter too, Catherine said quietly. She would have been Lily's age if she'd lived. She taught me that the strongest thing you can ever do is ask for help when you need it. I forgot that lesson until tonight. Something shifted in that smoke-filled stairwell. Two strangers, stripped of titles and pretenses, just two parents who understood loss and love and the desperate need to make it home to what mattered. Marcus stood up, his strength returning with purpose. "Let's go meet our girls," he said, and Catherine saw what she'd been blind to before. Real strength wasn't about never needing anyone. It was about showing up anyway. They made it down the remaining 22 floors together, Catherine guiding him through shortcuts she'd memorized from blueprints during the building's construction, Marcus carrying her with renewed determination. When they finally burst through the ground floor exit, firefighters rushed to help them. Paramedics wrapped them in blankets and checked them over. Catherine's assistant ran up, crying, apologizing, saying everyone thought someone else had helped her. But Catherine wasn't listening. She was watching Marcus pull out his phone with shaking hands and call his daughter. "Hey, baby girl," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Daddy's okay. There was a fire at work, but Daddy's okay. I'll be there soon." The next morning, Catherine called an emergency board meeting. She arrived early, waiting in the same conference room where she'd been abandoned. When her executives filed in, shame-faced and avoiding her eyes, she didn't scream or fire anyone. Instead, she told them about Marcus, about being carried down 42 floors by someone she'd never bothered to know, about the difference between position and character. "Marcus Chen is being promoted to Director of Operations," she announced. "And we're implementing a new company value, one we should have had all along. We don't leave people behind. Not when things get hard, not when it's inconvenient, not ever." Marcus, sitting uncomfortably in the back of the boardroom in a borrowed suit, shifted in his seat. He hadn't wanted recognition. He'd just wanted to do what was right. But when Catherine wheeled over to him after the meeting and asked if he'd have lunch with her and Lily sometime, he understood. This wasn't about gratitude or debt. This was about two people who'd reminded each other what it meant to be human. 3 months later, Lily and Catherine were having weekly dinosaur tea parties, and Marcus had revolutionized operations with the same practical thinking he'd used to save a life. The executives who'd fled learned to look beyond titles and see the janitors, assistants, and IT staff who made everything possible. Because sometimes it takes being left behind to learn who truly knows the way forward. And sometimes the smallest acts of courage, done by the quietest people, create the loudest echoes of change. In the end, no one needed to know Marcus's name to understand his impact, except for the woman whose life he saved. And the little girl who'd always known her daddy was the strongest person in the world. Not because he never needed help, but because he always offered it when it mattered most.